Daniel, we got a fan question coming from Robert Evans, and he's asking you, DC, how does it feel to be only inches away from greatness?
You know, Chael, honestly, my life has gotten a lot better since I started to do this show with you. I am forever grateful for the opportunity to share the screen with the bad guy. What's up, guys? Welcome to a new episode of Good Guy, Bad Guy. I'm Daniel Cormier, and that right there is the fighting pride of Westland, Oregon. Hey, you know, Chael, I would not have said you're still the fighting pride, but we're back because we're fighting again. But as we get into this show, Chael, we spoke about your fighting career, and it is very long, and it's going to be going on for a while now. But a guy who has a long career ahead of him is the lightweight champion of the world, Islam Makhachev. He's fighting Dustin Poirier. We all know that. What is surprising, though, Chael, is the odds. And Islam Makhachev is a massive favorite over Dustin Poirier to retain his championship at UFC 302. Chael, is this a mistake? Dustin Poirier is plus 375. Islam minus 550. Islam is only plus 105 to win this fight by submission. So essentially, people are saying the most likely outcome in this fight is for Islam Makhachev to submit Dustin Poirier. Is this a mistake by the judge, by the guys setting the line to make this so heavily in Islam's favor?
It only becomes a problem is if Islam believes it. I don't think Islam does. Listen, we had him on here 2 weeks ago. I asked him that question flat out. Even with the language barrier, he was able to understand what I was asking, which is, hey, Islam, are you underestimating? Are you looking past? Are you not aware of the problem that Dustin Poirier presents? And Islam said, no way, brother. That is an exact quote. He says he does get it. That the only reason he hadn't been calling out Islam, or I apologize, that Islam hadn't called out Dustin, he just didn't think Dustin could return to the number one contendership. It wasn't that he overlooked him or didn't respect him as an opponent. He said, I didn't think Dustin could get back here. But after he gets a knockout over St. Denis, after Armand turns him down, what a difference a day can make. And I really did need to hear that from Islam, because all setups have one thing in common, which is the guy that gets upset finds himself in a match that's harder than he thought it was going to be. According to Islam himself, he knows he's in for a war.
You know, Chael, I know Islam, and I kind of when we talked to him, I said something in the interview. I go, oh my goodness. I said, he's being disrespectful, because he starts to laugh before he answers a question. I don't necessarily think he's overlooking Dustin. I do believe that he knows the threat that's in front of him, but I do believe that he's extremely confident that he can get the job done. And it's in this response. Brother, every time Dustin Poirier gets into the tough fights, he finds a way to get or to lose. He said something to that effect in our conversation. You know who does believe that Islam Makhachev is looking past him? Is Dustin Poirier. Everybody that will listen, I saw him speaking to Andreas Hale. He's a reporter at ESPN, one of our insiders, and Dustin was saying he feels it. He feels Islam's looking past him, and he feels he is going to put him out. I agree with you. The guy that usually gets upset takes his opponent too lightly. I don't think that's the case, but I do believe that these lines are a little bit overstated, man. I know Islam's been great, but to make him that big a favorite over Poirier, to me, seems like a lot.
And Daniel, we present this sport to the audience as though it's about the punches and the kicks. Are you better with the hands and the feet than I am? But the reality, when you're in there, you and I know this, it's a battle of wills. I'm trying to break your spirit and you're trying to break mine. You might be able to do it really quickly by showing me that I'm not ready for this, or I don't want this bad enough, or you might have to be out there a while to do it. And the reason I tell you that, we take inventory as athletes. Let's just say you lose the first round, you go to your corner, you're doing the math in your head. Okay, I got 4 more of these left. This is terrible. It didn't start off going well. I feel worse now. Not going to be my night. Let me start finding a way out. And that's just the reality of a fighter. And some take that and some can push that voice away and reset. But one thing about Dustin Poirier, he never does that inventory. If you even just go back to his last fight, Sure, he won the fight, but he didn't win his last round that he completed. As a matter of fact, he didn't win the round before that he competed in. As a matter of fact, he didn't win the round before that he competed in. And we don't generally have a number one contender that lost his last 3 rounds. But when you're dealing with Dustin Poirier, who knows the rules of this game only turn to the judges if we make it that far. If I put you out, they're going to raise my hand. And that's the big problem with taking on Dustin, with overlooking Dustin. And that's why every fighter respects Dustin. I think Islam does too.
Yeah, he does. And Chael, there were times, and what I learned in the Saint Denis fight is this. I remember watching Dustin Poirier and watching his entire career. I've seen him from the very start, right? I trained with him before he even made his UFC debut from the same hometown. And I watched that fight with Khabib, and he said to his corner, I've never felt someone so strong. And he found himself getting submitted. And I remember watching him against Charles Oliveira. And his body language didn't look great. And I think, Chael, that spoke to you, what you just said. Sometimes it's not your night. Then we watched him against Benoit Saint-Denis. And it was the same type of situation presented to him again, but he overcame it. And I feel like that is very indicative of who Dustin Poirier is today. Because of the loss to Justin Gaethje in Utah for the BMF title, he recognized that there is no more rope. I can't say if I lose this one, I can come back the next time. He still has goals to become a champion. And he knew on that night in Miami, even though things aren't going my way, I have to overcome this. And I believe he's better for it because he overcame Benoit Saint-Denis in the way that he did, earns himself a championship opportunity, so that when he's in there with Islam, he knows now that he can pull himself back to where he needs to be, where, like you said, Chael, it takes one. For Dustin Poirier, it takes one. One big shot to knock you out. If there's anything that gives him encouragement, is that we have seen it happen to Islam before. Look, man, the one thing about Khabib was when you're breaking him down, Chael, and you look for weaknesses and you look for moments where he didn't have success, you couldn't find him. You couldn't find him. He won about every round in every single fight he was in. With Islam, you can always go back to Adriano Martins back in Houston, way back in 2015, knocking him out. So you can go and find a moment, even though there are few, where Islam Makhachev didn't have success. And I think that can propel Dustin forward into giving some confidence.
Yeah. No, I know a lot of fans are looking to that. I mean, a lot of fans are wondering, hey, what could possibly happen here? When you have a guy that will knock people out in Dustin versus a guy that's only lost one fight. Oh, by the way, it's because he got knocked out, right? It's one of those things. Can I tell you something else that I'm looking for? When Charles Oliveira stepped in, I personally missed how good he was. I'm starting to see it now, but I was a little bit late to the party. There was comparisons to him and Khabib, though, started by some in our community. I thought, that is so absurd and so ridiculous. But over a period of time, Charles had fought 2 guys. It was Justin Gaethje and Dustin Poirier that were common opponents to Khabib. It was very interesting that Charles Oliveira finished those guys collectively 2 minutes faster than Khabib did. Now, I'm only telling you that because when we look at Islam, who's supposedly the student to the king who is Khabib, I think it is interesting to have common opponents. I think that there's other things that we're looking for here. Is it just about who can win between Islam and Dustin? Ultimately, for that night, sure, but to a hardcore fan like me, I want to see who wins the rounds. I want to see who does well on the exchanges versus the ground. I want to juxtapose that against how Khabib did with the same opponent. So I only share, there's a lot of pressure on Islam. As I'm telling you, this is a common opponent that his own mentor Khabib has beaten before. Don't think for a moment that Islam doesn't know there's people like me that are going to judge him, not just on how he wins, but if he wins cleanly and clearly enough.
Chael, one thing that I believe great teams have is you always set a goal, not only for yourself, but to be the best in the group of people that you compete with or train with. That's one thing we always did. Khabib and myself and Luke and Kane, we always said, I want to be the best this in AKA. I want to be the best this in AKA. And you remember on that interview with Islam, he said to me, I want to be the guy like you, DC, that will be the double champ in AK, but I want to do it in a way that was better than you. Because that's the one thing he can do in that gym that nobody else did. But he also, if you say that, right, you also know and can say that he is aware of how Khabib beat Dustin Poirier, to your point. So it's always about not only setting goals, but exceeding a goal that was already done or accomplished by someone you value, right? By someone that you find motivation in, someone that that matters to you, Khabib and me and all the guys in the gym. So setting those goals and making them bigger is what Islam Makhachev wants. What you and I are here to do, though, Chael, is to look at those lines and go, hey, those guys are supposed to be the experts. They watch fighting. We do fighting. We know what this game is. And I look at that line and I go, that's too much. And I'm telling you, as a person from the inside that knows the game, that's too much. Because there's a much better chance that this fight is better than what that line states, especially when it says that they can be a submission as the most likely outcome. Now, another factor in this fight, Chael, and it would be dumb for Islam Makhachev not to use this, is having Khabib be the guy that is almost leading the training. You remember a while back, Coach Khabib became a thing. He was so involved in the preparation of all those great Russian fighters. And then he stepped away. He said when Islam won the belt, the focus was too much on him. He stepped away. He wasn't even there when Islam fought in Abu Dhabi against Alexander Volkanovski last time. But he's back now. And he's in New Jersey and he's helping him prepare for Dustin Poirier. Is this just the mentor, Chael, coming back to his rightful place? Or do you think this speaks to the danger that is Dustin Poirier and Khabib feels he needs to be more hands-on with his prized pupil?
What an incredible observation that you just made. I had never made that connection, and I didn't take it that way at all. I thought Khabib's schedule cleared up, and it was purely a coincidence. Now you've got me looking at this very different. Wow. Let me just break this down, because you just brought this to me the first time ever. So Khabib, who knows Dustin because he's been in there. Khabib, who respects Dustin and knows where his strengths are because he's been in there, all of a sudden realizes that his pupil needs a little more individualized attention. I didn't look at it that way, and I do find that to be very interesting. One person that's been upset about these lines that you speak of, by the way, is Dustin, who's like the world's nicest guy. He's always the quiet one. He's always the quiet one in the corner with the really good skill set, but he never speaks up. He's speaking up, man. He didn't do this on St. Denis, and somehow he became a 2-1 underdog before that fight went off. He was ranked 12 spots higher than St. Denis, but he's a 2-1 underdog. He doesn't like this, that he's being overlooked. He understands that it's his last chance. And so many times guys like you and I will talk about pressure and who's got the pressure. We come to a conclusion of that, but it's also important that we figure out who's got the motivation. And for Dustin to understand that this opportunity is not coming around again. He will not fight for a world title again unless he's the one that brings the world title, meaning he beats Islam, I think adds to it. And when I read his interview and I heard his words, he does know what he's up against. He fully knows what he's getting into. He also is comparing that to Khabib and the things that he wish he would have done differently. Now, just because you know something doesn't mean you can stop something, but I think it's a step in the right direction. I think that Dustin's got a little bit of a leg up, and I agree with you, the spread is a little too wide.
Yeah, me seeing Khabib more involved, I like it, man, because I believe that he has a role to fill in that region, because when his father passed, his dad was as important to these guys as anyone in their lives, and he led that region of young men to become great fighters. And Khabib kind of seamlessly filled that void right after. And I believe that in order for those guys to truly accomplish everything that they want to or they are supposed to, it's going to take him being a part of it. And I know and I appreciate how he wants to make sure he doesn't overshine those guys. Because at the end of the day, he will always be the great Khabib Nurmagomedov that was undefeated and undisputed. But his knowledge, and Chael, more importantly, the respect they have for him will make sure that they always do everything that he asks of them. And I believe that he's going to be a valuable asset to those guys and his entire region of fighters in the Dagestan, area and in the world. So yeah, I love seeing him back. I love seeing him in New Jersey, and I'm excited to get there to watch those guys fight. You're going to New Jersey, right, Joe? You can be there, right?
I will be there. I'm actually doing a show with you. Can I just tell you a quick story because you brought up Khabib? I was in a sauna one time, and there was a guy, and nobody knew who he was. He was a UFC guy, but he blended in, and he got kind of a weird beard and short hair. His name was Khabib Nurmagomedov, but this was before he got over. And I'm just a guy in the sauna, and I'm eavesdropping. Now, I'm going to change the numbers here. This isn't a quote, but you'll still get the point. And Khabib was telling the person he was with that in his village, there's 2,800 people. But within that village, there is 21 Olympic gold medals. And I'm only sharing that. Even if I've got my numbers a little off, I got his point. I'm like, wow, this is one of those things in that area you're just expected to do. Sometimes guys like you and I, Daniel, we get in there and the lights are so bright. Guys like this grew up expecting to win. If you end up second or you end up third, which in some places is a lifetime accomplishment, they'll put you on the cover and they'll use you to sell apparel. Over there, it's a fail. You're expected to be a champion. And I'll never forget the day that I heard this guy, because I thought he was lying. And all these years later, turns out that guy was Khabib, and he was telling the truth.
He was absolutely telling the truth. The guy's a winner, and he always expects to win, and so does Islam and Dustin Poirier. But you know another guy that's a champion, and that's a winner, is Conor McGregor. Now, Conor McGregor is a winner. He's a champion. He's a guy that when he does compete, it's a spectacle. It's an event. One thing we haven't gotten, though, is consistency. We have not gotten Conor consistent over a period of time. Well, the other day he spoke to wanting to be consistent, and his schedule, Chael, was very, very exciting for the people that love Conor McGregor. Take a listen.
I'll do 3 this year. June, September, December.
You want to throw any names at me as well to attach to that?
Yeah, no, we've got the what's his name, Chandler, June, obviously. September Sphere is a Mexican Independence Day. Potentially someone with a Mexican heritage. Maybe I think Diaz would be perfect. I don't know the ins and outs. I kind of thought that would be a lovely one. Mm-hmm. I'm up for any one of them. And that's the truth. I don't really care who it is. I'm back. I want activity, and I've said this before, and I'm God's willing, please. This is the time, and I feel and believe that it is. Yeah. So, whoever it is, there's loads of matchups to that it could be. They're queuing up. There's been loads of call-outs.
They very rarely stop queuing up for you, Conor.
Yeah, so I'm excited about that. Line them up, and I'm going to knock them down.
Yeah. Conor McGregor is the biggest superstar the sport has ever seen, but he said he wants Chandler, then he wants Diaz, and then at UFC 310 he wants anyone, Chael. Conor McGregor has a notorious plan for 2024. But when you look at those names, do you feel like those would be the names that you would put him in the octagon with?
No, Conor most likely is going to face obscurity followed by alcoholism. Oh, and by the way, that doesn't bring me a pleasure, and I don't say that to be funny. Hear me out on this. Conor took a period of time off. All of a sudden, and this is December of 2020, the year gets away from me. He makes an announcement that he wants to fight and he wants to do it next month. Dana doesn't have an event the following month, which turned out to be January 20th off the top of my head. He didn't even have a venue. Dana went and got a venue, put the whole thing together, brought in the cameras, sold this thing out in 24 hours. Turned out to be Conor opposite Cowboy Cerrone. Now, Conor was very candid in an interview after. He wouldn't confirm any of the rumors that we'd heard in the tabloids about him, but he did say, I'm not doing those things now. And he also said, I won't start doing those things again as long as I have a fight, and therefore I'm going to fight 3 more times this year, which would be a total of 4 fights. And I think if we've ever made a mistake in this industry, it was to not fight Conor when he wanted to fight. But I got to bring you that piece of history, because do I think Conor can get 2 more fights? No. After the Cowboy fight, he couldn't get him that year. I don't know why it would be different. If I am going to play along and be a good sport, okay, great. Let's do RDA, simply because RDA was promised it at one point. He never backed out. He came back. RDA seems like he's done everything right. Let's just finish the promise that we made. If we're going to do a second fight, I want to see Colby Covington. Now, before I tell you why I want to see Conor and Colby Covington, I would like to back up as to why I'm telling you that it's going to be very tough in retirement for Conor. I think that Conor, what you just saw, is called a negotiation. 2 days ago, it came out that Conor's contract is up and that Dana White and he are speaking. So when Conor comes to the media, one thing that he knew was a weakness is that he doesn't fight very often. He's attempting to tell the world, I will fight. In fact, I'll fight even more often. I don't think it was sincere. I don't believe it. I do think it was a good move, though.
Yeah, it was a very good move. He's out there sitting with Oscar, who is his YouTube guy, right? The guy runs his YouTube. So this guy, Conor McGregor's a businessman. He's very, very smart. Look, I would love to see him fight that many times. I don't know that he will, but if he does,
Really?
if he is
Really?
successful,
Very, 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 very
I would
smart.
like to see him fight.
Very, very smart.
I would like to see him fight.
That's an interesting comment.
I don't think he will. Chill. You shut up, Chill. So I believe
Interesting.
if he gets through Michael Chandler, Chill, I say give him a title fight. Put him in there with Poirier or Makhachev on Mexican Independence Day or sometime soon thereafter, because you don't want to have him fighting or having too much time. If he loses, put him out there with Tony Ferguson. Tony Ferguson deserves to have that big platform the last time to see if he can go and do what he said he was going to do to Conor all those times and so long ago. And in December, let him do Max Holloway. Let him and Max Holloway fight. I want to see Conor McGregor and Max Holloway today, opposed to Max Holloway when they were children. The first time they fought, they were kids. I'd like to see the end of the year, as we head to Vegas, to end the year. I want to see Max Holloway get an opportunity to right that wrong against Conor McGregor, especially if it's the Max Holloway that we saw fight Justin Gaethje. So if he wins, give him a title fight. Put him in there with Makhachev or Poirier winner. If he loses, let Tony Ferguson get his run back. Let him get his chance to go and make things right. And at the end of the year, let's see him fight against the Blessed Express. Whoop, whoop. Max Holloway in Vegas to see how those guys look today opposed to when they were children the first time they fought.
And I'm interpreting what you're saying to be done more with heart than competitiveness. And I come from the same standpoint. Like with my heart, I would like to see RDA get that opportunity. I know that Conor would fight anybody. I know that Conor would fight RDA, and that's not even a question considering Conor signed a contract and was planning to fight RDA. I also feel like RDA's had the hardest schedule of anybody in the history of our sport. I do not say that with an exaggeration. If you go look at who he's fought and when he's fought him, I think you'd agree with me. I know RDA would like to fight. I'd like to see Conor versus RDA. Conor versus Colby is a whole lot of fun. And you did say one thing, though, partner. You said if he wins, and you were talking about his upcoming fight with Michael Chandler, the outcome of Conor's previous fights have never had any dictation on Conor's career. He's never come off that main event spot. It doesn't matter if he wins or loses. It's never affected his ability to draw. It's never affected his ability to sell out a gate well in advance. I do hear your point about the title shot. And I'll tell you one other consistency when Conor's speaking, which I feel is a negotiation, is the spear. I don't know why that is, but I will tell you in Conor's last 6 interviews, he's mentioned the spear. I don't know why. And sometimes Conor just says things and he just puts them out there, but he's put out the spear specifically 6 times. And I'm just wondering if there's any rule that we have to follow. Like if it's Mexican Independence Day, do we have to put in the main event on either the red corner or the blue corner a Mexican fighter? I don't know. That's never been established. If one half of it wants to be Conor McGregor, I'm all for it.
Chill, let me tell you something. Mexican Independence Day card, greatest fight night I've had in a long time. I mean, the music was tremendous. It was all mariachi music. They had so many Mexican flags in the T-Mobile Arena. The Sphere this year is going to be a one-time only thing, so I know why Conor wants to be a part of that. They'll never go back to the Sphere. This is a one-time thing. So if you want to be a part of something truly special, you try to find your way onto that Sphere card. So I see that's why Conor's doing it. But I don't know. I think you do have to have a Mexican fighter if you're doing Mexican Independence Day, because before it was always Canelo's Day. If you're going to take that day, you better put a real big name Mexican fighter in that main event or somewhere close to it. Chael, now it's time for This Week in MMA History. Chael, today is May 23rd of 2024. 9 years ago today, check it out.
It is all over! Daniel Cormier is the new UFC light heavyweight champion! And the new undisputed UFC light heavyweight champion of the world, Daniel DC
Yeah. You see it? You see it, Chael?
Is that a great moment or what? Do you love seeing that? I got to tell you, hey, you know what? No surprise to me. In fact, I didn't even know what took so long. In fact, the night that happened, you were already the Strikeforce Grand Prix champion, which was at heavyweight that had 3 world heavyweight champions within the bracket. I mean, I'm just saying, I knew you were going to be great. There was a time, and it was, I believe, 2001, and wrestling was loaded. We had Tim Hartung, and what's Melvin Douglas going to do, and Dean out of West Virginia, and there's just all these studs around. And I remember Donnie McPherson, Coach McPherson said to me, just made this comment to me, they're all going to have to find a new weight next year. And I remember saying, why? And they said, because they're going to need to make room for Daniel Cormier. And you were second in the NCAA. And it was, by the way, at 184 pounds. Like I assumed if you went freestyle, it'd be at 184 pounds. Not a whole new weight class, and that all these NCAA champions were going to have to turn and run. But one of the top coaches in the country told me they would. And I only say that because when you finally emerged and get that belt and the whole world saw how great you were, I already knew. I wasn't surprised in the least.
Because you're the smartest man in the business. But guys, I remember that night, and I'll never forget it. I went in there with Rumble, and I was the underdog. And I knew Anthony from when we were younger, and I figured I could try to big brother him, and that's what I kind of always tried to do with him. You know, in wrestling, you know someone you can kind of try to treat as though they're your little brother. Rumble's one of those guys. It was a great fight. He knocked me silly very early. I ultimately got the submission and won the belt. But I just, now looking back, it's already been 9 years, which is crazy. I'm just happy I got to have that moment with a guy in Anthony Johnson who I really treasured. You know, we got to fight for the world championship of the world. And very rarely do you get to fight someone that you just respect, and that after it's all said and done, you can get on the phone and go, hey, man, I love being able to do that with you. We ultimately got to do it twice. But it was one of the greatest moments of my life. I remember leaving that octagon, and I walked over to my father, who isn't here today, and I gave him a big hug, and he said, my boy's a world champion. You know, he had seen me win the Strikeforce title, but they all know the UFC, even if you don't follow it. And my dad said, my boy's a world champ. And I swear, Chael, I loved all the belts, but every time I won, my mom would go back to her church and brag about the fight, being in Las Vegas, and her son won. But I always did love that I got to give that to my dad and to my son. Hey, my dad's a world champ, you know, or my son is the world champion. That means a lot to us, man. That meant a lot to my dad, especially going back to our community where we used to watch the Wild World of Sports and watch those great boxers that looked like me become world champ. For my dad to be able to say his son was a world champion was very special. And every night I'd walk over to him and give him that world championship belt. You know, Chael, my father was a hard man, and as he got older, man, I wonder if your dad did stuff like this. He would tell my children how much he loved them. I don't remember him doing that for me when I was a kid. He would teach me about hard work and all this other stuff, but he was openly affectionate with my children. I'm like, who is this person? Does your dad do that with your kids?
I've heard of dads like that. Like, I've heard that story many times, and that people from our father's generation, like, you'll hear that their parents never told them, I love you, or never hugged them. Like, that was just a different time or a different thing back then. I got to ask you something. This is very unfair of me. I'm sorry. I actually hate to do this, but that moment we just saw, your first world title over Rumble, that feeling you had versus when the referee pulled you off of Stipe, which one was better?
Oh.
Can you remember? Could you even say which one was better?
They were both awesome, but boy, when I knocked Stipe out, I knew my world had changed. Could I tell you? Could I tell you the craziest one was when I beat Josh Barnett? Because the moment I walked out of that octagon in Strikeforce, Bob Cook walked over to me and goes, "Everything's gonna change now. We're in the money, baby." That's what he told me. He goes, "You have no idea how much stuff is going to change for you now." When I won the Strikeforce championship, it was amazing. Chael, another great show. As always, unfortunately, we don't have one next Monday. We're going to be in Newark next time, and we'll be with each other. But, guys, in terms of our regular schedule, it's every Monday and Thursday, wherever you get your podcast. Get us on ESPN MMA YouTube, ESPN Plus, and ESPN2. You get your good guy, you get your bad guy. I know the line's a bit blurred at times, but so what? we are who we are. Until next time, that's Chael Sonnen. I'm Daniel Cormier. We're going to catch y'all on the next one. Peace.